So I'm going to now introduce Ken Ehrhart. Ken and I met, I think, in April for the first time at VRLA, and we've kept kind of running into each other. And he came out for our VR and healthcare event, which was here in June. And we went out to dinner afterwards, and we're starting to talk a little bit more in length about VR for good and nonprofit stuff and your own endeavors. The idea for doing this conference kind of came up at that dinner, and just decided a couple of weeks later to start organizing it, and that's kind of how we are here today. So Ken is the CEO and founder of a VR development startup called Paracosma. Very interesting gentleman. Split his time in 3 very wide different time zones, and whose own development team is based in Kathmandu. So, Ken, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Thanks, Bob. Well, thank you all for being here. It's a great pleasure, as Bob says. It looks like we'll have a little formatting issue here, but that's okay. As Bob says, we started thinking about this conference about 6 or 8 months ago. The conception of the relevance of this and the topic goes back much farther than that, in my thinking, at least. In terms of our company, Paracosma, we really look at virtual reality from 3 standpoints. The first is to make virtual reality as good as reality. How do you make photorealism? How do you trick the brain, trick your senses into believing that what you're seeing and experiencing and hearing is real? The second is to make virtual reality better than the real world, to enable you to travel to other planets, to other places, to other worlds that haven't been conceived yet, but might be of interest to you. The third, and perhaps the most important, the reason we're here today, is to use virtual reality to make the real world better. How do we use these experiences, these technologies, to improve the human condition, improve the world going forward? Here's a quote that could have been written yesterday, last week. It isn't clear. Only one person can use it at a time. It's too expensive. Very common perceptions about virtual reality or commentary made today. In fact, this was written in 1935 in a short story by Stanley G. Weinbaum called Pygmalion Spectacles. In the story, the hero tries on virtual reality goggles exactly like we have today, has an experience exactly like you would with a demo upstairs, and goes into a virtual world. In that virtual world, everything's fantastic, everything's beautiful, it's a wonderful place. He falls in love with the woman he meets there. That virtual world he entered was called Paracosma, and it's the name of our company. The reason I asked you to think about that was this was 82 years ago. So for today, for my presentation for the conference, I want you to think about 82 years in the future. Not 82 days, not 8 weeks, 8 months. Think to the future, where technology will take us, what will be possible then, as it might be, not where things are today. And here's the geeky slide to take us partway there. The red line is the GPU gigaflops of a graphics card on a desktop PC, taking us up to the green line, which is the minimum specs for PC-based VR. The purple line is PlayStation performance on a PS3, and then minimum specs for VR, PS4 up to PS4 Pro. The orange line is where we are with mobile phones, the iPhone. The dotted lines are different chips that already are in existence, but are being optimized more for mobile applications, for power saving, for heat, and so forth. The point of this is within 2 to 4 years, we will be able to do on a cell phone what we can now only do on a PS4 or a desktop PC. So for you, anyone who's worried about the price of things, don't worry. Eventually, we'll have VR for free in our phones. If you're worried about displays, don't worry about that either. Now we put a kilogram on our head. It's somewhat uncomfortable. It's not the best experience. already people are making LCD contact lenses. We will have the ability through projection onto the retina, through VR sunglasses, AR sunglasses, through other devices to improve the experience where you can see virtual and augmented content in a very comfortable and a very natural way that you can incorporate into your life. It won't be an experience itself to enjoy this content. And for me, I might not be around in 82 years. My son, my 2-year-old, hopefully he will be. And that's why I'm looking at this technology, and I hope you'd look at this technology as a technology for the future generations. My 2-year-old is a master at an iPad and an iPhone. He can search for his ambulance videos by voice. He can do everything he needs to do, including, warn us when it's low on battery. It's just a natural, intuitive thing. Similarly, when he tries on VR, if I try and take off the headset, he pulls it back. For him, it's a natural experience, a wonderful experience to visit these virtual worlds. You can see on YouTube and other places videos of chimpanzees and others trying VR and experiencing VR. It's just a way to experience another world, another existence. These are some kids. These are kids in my 8-year-old's elementary school trying VR. And this was at an event called Ocean's Night, where, in fact, they were swimming with wild dolphins in 360 video. So they were putting on the headsets, watching about 1.5 minutes of dolphins underwater, an experience that most kids haven't had a chance to do. I've done it in real life. It's an incredible experience. And VR is really the closest you can come to that without getting wet. And as a result of this, we had over 200 kids watch these videos in the course of 3 hours of Ocean's Night. We had a line, 12 people long, 2 headsets going. It was just a wonderful, great experience. The prior experience was this. At Ocean's Night, we set up a bucket of water, put on some scuba gear, stuck our head in a bucket of water. It gave you a great sense of what it's like to wear a mask or breathe underwater, but it didn't convey the magic and wonder of the experience to people. And we're experimenting with this in part because I'm a director of a nonprofit that does marine science and conservation. And conveying these concepts, these experiences, is quite critical in helping people appreciate what needs protecting and what exists. And in terms of schools, in terms of school children, virtual reality is really unprecedented. If you think about the opportunity gap between children who can go to Europe and visit the British Museum or see the Vatican or go to the national parks or experience different environments, it's very limited compared to those who can't afford those experiences. And in VR, we begin to enable children of any circumstance to experience these experiences that broaden their minds, broaden their opportunity, and get them thinking about the world in a new way. And this isn't just an opportunity for the children, it's an opportunity for the world, for the cultural treasures of the world. This is the Kremer collection in the Netherlands. It's a fantastic collection of 74 Dutch Old Master paintings from Rembrandt, from others, that does not exist in a physical place, except for storage vaults. It has been a traveling exhibit that goes to museums around the world for millions of dollars of travel and insurance costs. Very limited audience. What they have done is create a virtual museum for people to go to and see these paintings as if you were there. And they've done this through photogrammetry, where they take over 3,500 photographs of each painting and recreate the painting in 3D, so you can see the brush strokes, you can see the luster, you can see the actual painting, and in better than real life, you can go up right to it, inches away from it, touch it, examine it. This collection was not visible to the world except for on rare occasions. Now it's accessible. I'm the chair of the library committee, not for this library, unfortunately, but for the American Alpine Club's library in Golden, Colorado. It's a small, relatively small facility. We get about 1,200 visitors a year. But this library has a rare books collection, a rare archives collection. We have the largest and most detailed Central Asia collection of original source material on the planet. For 6 million German Alpine Club members, they will, through virtual reality, eventually have an opportunity to visit our library. So what this does for small archives, small museums, small cultural sites worldwide is incredible. In terms of the long tail audiences for these experiences, it provides a resource to get to the world that hasn't been experienced before. This is a temple in Kathmandu, Nepal. It's one of the third most sacred Hindu temples in the world. Thousands and thousands of pilgrims every year come to this temple. The upper photo is actually a 360 photo of video we've made showing the actual temple. The bottom photo is a 3D model that we've recreated of parts of the temple where you can go and walk around and explore and see the temple, see the earthquake damage, see the ancient monuments in real life. We'll be demoing this upstairs when I'm not down here. What this enables is 1 billion Hindus to make a virtual pilgrimage to this site when they didn't necessarily have the means or capability to do that before. Similarly, with Buddha's birthplace in Nepal, Lumbini, we're doing a virtual tour accessible through web pages and cell phones with 360 media and ultimately in full VR. The wonder of VR is we don't just have to visit ruins today of the place where Buddha was born, but we have the chance to travel back in history and see what it was like when Buddha was born, when it was recognized as his birthplace and declared a special place. And again, this enables 1 billion Buddhists in the world to visit the site, to make a pilgrimage, not to take a tour of a hotel lobby or a hotel room, but actually to go someplace that's meaningful and powerful to them in their lives that they wouldn't otherwise have a chance to do.
My name is Henry. I'm 24 years old. Since 2011, I've been quite busy. And with virtual reality, I've been able to watch things that I hardly ever be able to see in my life again. It's crazy. And I'm floating in space. Whoa.
So for not just students, to provide a greater experience for them and mobility for them, but for paraplegics, for shut-ins, for people in nursing homes, for terminally ill children, for anyone, VR has the potential to offer an experience that they can no longer have firsthand. This has been proven to be incredibly valuable, for example, for elderly people with dementia, to revisit their childhood, to revisit experiences within their lives. For others, it's really an opportunity that we haven't had before in a lot of respects. But beyond that, virtual reality is really doing absolutely remarkable things. If you haven't had a chance to look into this, it's really quite remarkable. What scientists, what doctors have done is taken a combination of virtual reality, exoskeletons, and other technologies to reintroduce physical movement and nerve connections within the lower extremities of patients to enable them to move and potentially walk again when prior to that they were completely immobilized. With the capability of seeing in your mind the movements that you expect to have and reconnecting the partial nerve waves to those muscles, to those connections, we've really been able to do something that's quite miraculous. and unbelievable. If I just said VR will enable people to walk again who weren't able to walk, I think that would be enough to say VR is good. But we can go beyond that, and we do go beyond that. This is another company, Neurable, that's doing brain-machine interfaces for communicating through brainwaves using a virtual reality headset. The inspiration for this company, for the founder and CEO, was a study that he read or was part of that suggested that of a group of patients who had zero ability to communicate, to speak, to vocalize, to communicate with the outside world, 50% of them had full mental capability, full mental capacity. They were trapped within their own bodies, within their brains. And to give them a means to communicate with the outside world was the goal. This could have been me when I was a kid. I have what's generally known as lazy eye. My right eye is dominant, my left eye is weak. Until recently, there was no treatment at all, zero treatment for adults with this condition. The only thing you could do is when a child was young enough, put a patch over their strong eye, make it compensate with the weak eye. So I wore a patch for 4 weeks, something like this. I took off the patch. I saw double for 3 or 4 weeks and had virtually no improvement, no change that I'm aware of. And that you couldn't do anything about until today. Now with virtual reality, we can put on a headset. We can change the view for each of the eyes. We can provide different strengths, different content, different realities, and recreate the neurological paths between the eye and the brain to actually improve and cure this condition. In one study, over 2/3 of the patients, adult patients, were able to cure this condition when previously there was zero cure. Similarly, VR has been shown to create behavioral responses. In one early study, it was shown that if you cut down a redwood tree in VR, you use less paper towels over the following weeks. A direct correlation between an experience, an empathetic response, and your behavior. Whether or not that can be long-term, how you manipulate that, if you will, is quite important. But VR, in the context of a lot of the presentations today, are about how do you use this empathy effect? How do you benefit from seeing things in VR that you haven't seen otherwise? We're working with GlacierWorks, David Bashir's organization, which has created a huge volume of high-resolution photographs of the Himalayas and the glaciers there to show the impact of climate change and melting glaciers. To look at photos like this is quite common. You see a lot of snow and ice in the top. You see not much in the bottom. It doesn't have as much impact as if you're standing at a glacier and you're looking up and you see this massive wall of ice, and in the next moment, it's a mile away. This is the type of experience that we can create that is uncommon today, but impactful for people. In terms of social change, the Arab Spring, social demonstrations and so forth, if you're a photojournalist, you might capture a picture like this. There's been huge impact from social media, people taking cell phone videos of protests and repression and so forth. But there's consequences to that as well. If you're seen with a camera in the middle of a country where they don't accept that freedom of the press, it can be quite dangerous. If I have a 360 camera like this, and I take it up and I take a picture and I put it down, I've captured a picture of everything. The entire scene that can be broadcast anywhere in the world, and you can see not just what someone wants you to see right in front of them, but the entire scene, the entire reality. So for photojournalism, for citizen journalism, VR will be amazing, but also for first responders, for the Red Cross, for others going to these conflict areas. We've been able to show through VR that you can inoculate people to the stress, to the experience before they go. So when they see the devastation of an earthquake, when they see a crisis situation, it has less impact on them psychologically. And in fact, VR has been used for post-traumatic stress system, other behavior modifications, phobias, other things where recreating that experience can help you overcome it. The goal ultimately, of course, is using this magic empathy card to create better awareness between societies, to create world peace, if you will. This was an example, an experiment, taking the lives and experience of Israelis and the lives and experience of Palestinians and letting people experience it close up in VR. This is one of my dreams, one of my goals, that we're able to create this. But what we need is not just empathy tourism, where you experience something briefly and you maybe say, oh, that's interesting, or you have a really bad experience like Mark Zuckerberg touring Haiti destruction with a cartoon avatar and people complaining. But you want to experience like a foreign exchange student, where you actually go to a place, meet people, experience the culture, get to know why it is valuable and important. Do we really want to demonstrate in 360 and VR what it feels like to be an African American stopped by the police? Or do we also want to show what it's like to have an African American in the White House as president? How do we inspire and create new realities rather than just reinforce stereotypes or give a glimpse at something that's not common in your daily life? This was the Machine to Be Another project for gender swap, where actually two people were able through VR to see the view of the other person and effectively to swap their gender. The man becomes the woman, the woman becomes a man. Whether you're considering marital therapy, sexual harassment training, whatever the context might be, you can imagine the good that can come from changing these perspectives, seeing the world through someone else's eyes. And this has an impact not just on social groups and society, but on individuals. How do you perceive yourself? This is a VR tool, if you will, by a plastic surgeon to envision for patients, how do you look with a different body, with a different face, with a different experience? Through augmented reality, we won't need plastic surgery because you'll be able to put on your AR contact lenses, and when you look at your significant other, you look at your spouse, you see them as maybe they want you to see them, whereas you would like to see them. So then, again, we're talking 82 years in the future, so don't laugh too much, but it will give us the ability to experience the person you're with in an infinite variety of ways. So is this a positive? Does this reduce this increase monogamy? Does it reduce other effects? You know, we can debate whether seeing something and doing something virtually wants you to do more of that in the real life, or it satisfies a need that you might have. My mother was an antique dealer and interior designer. And if you look at a home, any home, you can tell usually quite readily if it's IKEA furniture and cheap and simple and basic, or if it's very wealthy style and so forth. But a chair is a chair for the most part. It has a seat, it has a back, it maybe has armrests. Through virtual and augmented reality, we can change that environment. We can change a chair into any type of chair, from a basic chair, a basic living room like this, into one like this. And what this enables really is not equality. It doesn't allow everyone in the world to have a mansion, but it allows everyone in the world to experience a different reality. If you're tired of your four walls, if you're tired of your experience, we will eventually be able to improve it. And through relatively cheap or free duplication of digital goods, we'll be able to create less scarcity and more abundance within the world. And this, can be as simple as changing the view out of your window. Do you want to see the New York skyline or a jungle or Niagara Falls? It will be up to you on a daily basis. And this is, again, if you look at the big picture of human evolution, where are we going as a species? For the mountain gorillas, loss of habitat is as important as the killing of the animals themselves. So, ultimately it will be wonderful if we have zoos in which the animals experience their own habitat through virtual reality. But if you look at the long term of human evolution, this is quite critical. I was involved in a project called Atlantica Expeditions to create the world's first undersea colony. and recruit people to go and live on a semi-permanent basis underwater. And when you think about this, again, long-term, 3/4 of the world is underwater. Huge resources are underwater. As we have scarcity of land and we need places for more people, imagine going underwater, but then you imagine immediately, oh, there's no sunlight, there's no vista, there's no horizon. It's a different experience than what I've evolved to enjoy. Through virtual reality, we can create an environment around us wherever we are. So if you're talking a moon or a Mars colonization effort, and people trapped in a space capsule for years at a time, VR enables them to experience an environment, a world that they used to experience. So think of climate change. As the world potentially will have the greatest migration of peoples that we have ever seen throughout history. Entire countries, the Seychelles, others, may be inundated and disappear from the earth. As those people move to other locations, if you move from the tropics to Canada, to revisit that environment that you're comfortable with, that you're from, it could be a great benefit. I think one of the greatest and most remarkable benefits of VR is that we have created an entirely new art medium. And yes, we've had sculpture before. Yes, we've had painting before. But what you can do in virtual reality, in 3 dimensions, around you, under you, is just absolutely incredible. So again, like helping paralyzed people walk, or curing incurable diseases, or giving children an experience like they've never been able to have before, VR enables new experiences, new creative ideas that we haven't been able to experience before. And so people ask, what's the killer app? What's the AAA game? Or, that's not the right question. VR itself, AR itself, is the killer app. It enables anything you want to experience in the world. People say that filmmakers complain, well, in traditional filmmaking, we can control what the viewer sees. We can control what people focus on, how we tell the story. With 360 media, you can't do that. Well, in life, you can't do that. In life, if I'm talking to someone, they need to be engaging. I need to be engaged to have that conversation and look at each other. Otherwise, I can look around the room. I can focus on anything. And so what we're really enabling with VR is new experience, a diversity of experience, a broadening of experience that helps to make our lives better, both in the short term and the long term. And that's the conception of the VR for Good conference. That's why we're here today. So if there's any questions, I'd be happy to entertain them.
In listening to you talk about a lot of different things, which I appreciate. I feel like I gained a lot of insight into the VR space just in these last 30 minutes, so thank you. Things that really resonate with me are generating that empathy that you talked about and using platforms to create new awareness. And then things that concern me, and you mentioned, we can debate the good or the bad side, is, the level of escapism or sort of getting away from what's real. And the thing that really kind of got me going was when you said with augmented reality, being able to see the world the way you want to see it. And I don't know. I'm interested to know sort of what your thoughts are about the good and the bad of those type things, or the dark and the light side.
It's like life, like video games. And so what people are often drawn to stimulating content, exciting content, powerful experience, and so forth. And video games is a great example. There's been a lot of studies as to if a lot of teenagers say watch a lot of video games, does that inspire or enable them to do more violent or dangerous things, Or does it provide a release where they can experience those things safely and then not do them? And I don't think we have a firm answer on that yet, but like life, we need to inculcate in people and children values and appreciation and awareness of what being in the world means and what interacting with other people means. And we need to inspire people as they travel the world in VR to appreciate that people are people, and these cultural ideas, these cultural experiences are equivalent or more significant than what we might experience in our own daily lives. And that teaching tolerance, that teaching awareness, does not come from just putting on a headset. We can go to another country even today as tourists and have a horrible experience that reinforces the most negative stereotypes of that person or that culture. And there's not an easy path between those two. And yes, you'll have people that get addicted to VR, that use VR for escapism, just as people use narcotics for escapism today. But it also provides a safe space and a safe capability to experiment with things that might not be possible otherwise. And again, through behavioral modification, through VR, we've been able to improve addictions, cure addictions, respond to addictions and so forth. So it's an evolving situation, and the part of the point of this conference is to have that ethical debate, to understand how is this used for evil? How is it used for good? And how do we tip the balance of the scale towards good? How do we make sure people are having this conversation on an ongoing basis? So every day we're farther and closer on the good side of the spectrum with that. Anything else? It's my great pleasure now to introduce Charlie Fink. Charlie is can be called a futurist, a writer, a visionary, what have you. He's working for Forbes magazine, for VR Voice. He's a man worth listening to and following on the web and other locations. It's a great honor and pleasure to introduce Charlie to talk about the world of VR.
Thank you.